Welcome to the new IT. Here we are in the studio again. Brad, tell us about the show today. What's going on?
Today's a really good show. I'm loving it.
It's a really good show today. Oh my gosh, we have got an amazing... Okay, tell us about the show. Okay, I'm already excited about it. I'm already excited.
I couldn't tell.
Well, you know me.
Right.
Let's calm down.
So today we're going to talk about diversity and inclusion and what that means. So what we've done is we've actually brought in experts in the industries to be able to help us understand how to be more diverse and inclusive. So with us today we have Sarah Jones. She's the CEO of Inclusion Pro, and we have Trina Limpart, and she's the CEO of RiseNet. And then we have Ginger, who's the VP of policy over at the Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce.
Ooh, I'm excited. So we're just going to dive in. We're going to learn about... can we just start with kind of you guys taking turns talking about your industry or what you're doing, your company, and just get to know you a little bit before we dive into the questions? You guys cool with that? You just want to take a turn real quick and let's get to know you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get things kicked off. We'll get started. We'll get things going here.
I love it.
So, yeah, Trina Limpart from Rise Next. As we mentioned, this is really fun because Sarah and I were just reminiscing. We've known each other for over a decade, I think, now. We've done a lot of work together over the years, both when I was in as a corporate before I started my consulting agency. And I actually recorded a podcast with her in this building. So we were having some fun look back today. Love working with her and with the Salt Lake Chamber and with Ginger. So this is really fun for me. But I've been in the tech industry for 25 years. So this is really fun to be here with New IT Podcast and getting connected back into the IT world. But really taking my background and experience within the tech industry, business, and strategy, and applying it to diversity, equity, and inclusion now. And that's really where my forte is really understanding how do we drive change and true impact. Really creating what I call diversity experience management, focusing on the experience of everybody that's going through this transformation, all the way from the executive team, the leaders, those that are overseeing it, and putting strategy and business behind it. And then have been building out an ecosystem of incredible technology partners and solution providers to, once we've got a strategy, then we start talking about what training do we need, what do we need from a solution providing for diversity hiring, for measurement and tracking, for AI solutions in data and management. There's a lot within this space that you don't realize until you start digging in and saying, this is a really broad area that it can get really overwhelming really fast. And so that's where we really try and help provide that clarity and kind of step-by-step people through the process as they get going.
Can I ask I want to ask a question already.
All right.
So 25 years in tech.
Yeah.
You've probably seen some inclusion, diversity changes and things. How do you feel about 25 years ago and now? And what do you think about the future? Just since we're right here, I just thought I'd jump in because you kind of opened up that door. I'm just curious. What do you think? Past, present, and future of.
Yeah, some things we've moved along and others we've moved backwards. It's really a shift. I actually wrote my thesis paper on why women should go into tech 25 years ago. And we've actually taken steps back, in my opinion, from what I'm seeing, especially with COVID and women leaving the workforce, where we've got a challenge on our hands. And when I was an executive at eBay, I know the pressure everybody's under. I was a tech executive. I'm trying to hire. I'm trying to find people. I can't find people locally. I'm bringing people off visas, and I still have women knocking on my door saying, Trina, I want to get into tech. I hear there's all this opportunity. How do I do it? So I'm like, what's the disconnect here in not being able to provide opportunities to everybody? And so I found that I work with the Women Tech Council, and that's how I've been really closely tied with Sarah over the years. And we founded a nonprofit called Tech Moms, and we help women transition into the tech industry so we can provide that diversity. So, Rise Next really helping with the strategy, but also providing those communities. I think organizations tying in at the community level is really where we need to focus.
Are you hopeful for the future?
Yes.
Do you think there's more and more folks standing up and raising their hands? Do you think it's getting
last
better?
Year, I think there's some awareness. I think people are still confused on how. So really our mantra is how to move people from awareness to action. Because you go through training, you have this awareness, things need to change, but how do I do it? That's really the challenge that we have on really trying to drive to action.
I love it. Awesome.
Well, I just cannot match your energy. I'm just, and which is so welcoming at the end of a very busy day. So thank you for bringing it.
He always brings it, so don't worry about that.
No, it's great. It's great. So yeah, been doing this for a long time, and the shifts are so interesting and fascinating. I actually started as a patent attorney, so if there's an industry that is lacking in women and minorities, that is one of them that has historically struggled, because you have the path of a STEM degree as well as a law degree, and so I would say what's interesting about our ability to do this work is we've also experienced that. What is it like to be a woman in tech?
Absolutely.
What is it like to go through those career pathways, and that deep experience that affords us? But and then I did tech entrepreneurship after that, and I would say diversity inclusion is not new. And I would say if we kind of look back on the different phases and decades, we just changed the way that we do it. And one of the things that I think is really fascinating about being able to do the work now, especially with everything that's gone on with COVID, Black Lives Matter, and all of the shifts that we've had with social justice, is there's actually a new frontier that's opening up, I think, for leaders and diversity inclusion experts to actually be able to create solutions that literally weren't possible. And I think people who haven't spent a lot of time in our industry really trying to change culture from the inside, they may not appreciate that what we have now. I hope we don't lose it, because there's this
there's some momentum.
There's always been momentum, but here's the way I would describe it. So people come to us all that time saying, what are the best practices? How do I diversify my team? What are the best practices? And Ginger and I will have these conversations at the chamber, right? And I'm like, well, what do you mean by best practices? Because the best practices depend on what your leadership team will allow for. So if your leadership team is not engaged, if they don't understand why they're doing diversity inclusion,
go back to that.
You're going to do this set of best practices. If you have a leadership team that really does the work to understand it, is engaged, aligned, you actually open yourself up to a new set of best practices. And so what is exciting is, if you think about, we come from the innovation space, right? Tech, entrepreneurship. I think there's actually a lot of solutions being created right now, which is kind of shocking in 2021 still. But we're creating solutions because now it's possible. It's kind of like if you look at tech and storage and semiconductors, there was only certain things. We can now envision a black hole because it's now possible, right? That's where we're kind of at with diversity, inclusion, and equity from my lens. We're actually in creation mode.
Yeah.
Which is an incredibly exciting place to be.
That's super
and
cool.
We're not having to deal with some of the barriers and the slogging through certain things that we used to have to do. And I think anyway, it's actually a really incredibly exciting time. But
I'm excited. She's brought it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Wow.
I got the energy. Okay,
this.
well, and that's the good news right there. So I'm excited to share more about what's happening.
Awesome.
Wow. So I actually forgot I was on this podcast. I was so interested in what we were talking about. Yes. So again, my name is Ginger Chin. I'm with the Salt Lake Chamber. And, as this lens has been, the lens has been on diversity and inclusion, and we've seen all these changes, our members came forward and said, we want to be intentional. We want to be intentional leaders. We want to have some cultural changes, but we don't even know where to begin. And so as you can see, I had the great opportunity to engage in the experts, and that's who we have here today. And with that, we decided, hey, let's get a diversity summit going. And that's what brought us here today, was to talk about November.
Yeah, let's talk about that for sure.
Talk about it
let's
real
talk
quickly.
about it right now.
Yeah, November 4th, we are hosting our first inaugural diversity summit, and it's at the Salt Palace. And we're bringing in Dr. Tony Byers. He wrote the book, The Multiplier Effect, and he'll be discussing the pieces in that book. And he was with Starbucks. He was the DEI officer at Starbucks.
They've done a few things. I've heard of them.
Yeah, they've done a little bit. They get my morning going.
Right.
And then we also, for our afternoon keynote, this is in partnership with Governor Cox's office. And Governor Cox, as an intentional leader, has made a lot of changes in the state as it relates to diversity and inclusion. And so we're partnered with the governor, But our afternoon keynote is President Johnson of the NAACP talking about why it's important for businesses not to take a step back, to keep moving forward. And additionally, we have 16 breakouts, and Sarah's one of our speakers, and Trina is one of our moderators. So we have just a fantastic lineup to talk about how businesses can be intentional with their leadership and their culture.
And that's November 4th.
November 4th.
November,
yes.
It's an all-day event.
Yeah, 7:30 to 4:30.
7:30 to
7:30
4:30.
to 4:30.
I'll be there prompt at 9:30.
Oh,
Sounds about right.
Just in time for my session.
Perfect.
That's all
Just
that
don't miss
matters, right?
Sarah.
can't miss Sarah. Yeah.
Now, actually, like I do want to just specifically highlight the great work that the Salt Lake Chamber has done. Like they didn't shy away from difficult conversations. They really brought their leadership. In fact, I believe your chair,
Craig Wagstaff,
his focus or priority this year as the chair of the board was diversity and inclusion and equity. And he's a white male, right? And so we're seeing these really great shifts of leaders. And this is another great example of what is it that leaders will allow for, right? Well, they've allowed for, I mean, not that sounds very condescending, but do you see what I'm understanding is now
Engaged actively.
Yes, now we're able to have a
real
business
conversation.
leadership driven summit, right? That's really driven at the leadership and business level, where now there's a whole new set of opportunities that are possible when we're able to bring that unique lens. And not that there haven't been great industry associations and groups and things like that, but it's just an example of sort of the new way that we're approaching, tackling, and it's leaders really leading that conversation, and it's super exciting.
That's
way
exciting.
exciting.
Awesome. Can I ask the question? I said I was
Sure.
going to give it to you, but I
It's
kind
all you.
of. So what do you guys think companies can do to get more involved? I mean, just on this openness, how do companies get more involved with inclusion and diversity?
Oh, that's a broad
Yeah, it's a big one. I figured
I know,
we want to start there so we can kind of maybe
Let me just
whittle it
level
down.
set here that I actually think most leaders that I've engaged actually do
They
want
are.
to put the effort.
They want to.
They want to. So I think as it's very rare that I find somebody who is adamantly opposed to doing anything. And so I guess the nice thing, again, some of the shifts we're seeing is we're having to spend less time convincing leaders now. And that's actually really exciting, right? Because think about how much energy we used to have to burn just in like
Awareness.
that process.
Just the
There's
right?
not a
awareness,
problem.
Yes.
There's not a
The
problem.
awareness is there.
Now we know that, yes.
Yeah, and now I know that I can't really opt out in the way that I used to be able to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's once they discover that and then engage, they realize it doesn't hurt as much as they thought it was gonna hurt. Does that make sense?
It's the whole
Like
get
makes
comfortable
sense.
being uncomfortable. Like
Yeah.
leadership is always trained. Get comfortable being uncomfortable, except for DEI. That's just too
Accept.
uncomfortable, And so it's like, oh wait, this is actually really exciting. There's some great things happening. I talked to a company just the other day, and they were like, we're bringing in interns from an outside university. How do we really think about creating a great experience as they come to Utah? I think this migration to Utah, how do we make sure we support diversity? There's a lot of exciting things happening in the area, and just wanting to be involved in those conversations. And it's being an open mindset of like, I don't know everything. How do I make sure I go through this correctly and create really great experiences as these people transition into our company and want to stay?
Yeah.
And, that's just one of the types of conversations that we're getting right now, and it is exciting, and it's fun. It's not this heavy thing anymore that we're trying to lift. It's not heavy. It's exciting.
It is. It seems like the past companies, corporations, where it was all about bottom line. It was all about what are the metrics going on to connect with the money. Doesn't it? It feels like that the world is changing to, hey, how do we actually make something that's worth a crap, and how do we have happy employees? How do we engage and connect with our employees and actually have them like what they're doing?
Yeah.
Is
and
that true?
Provide insight. So I think one of the big things that aha moments that I think organizations are going through of, wow, the more we engage with our women and minority groups and bring them to the table to give us perspectives, the better we do as a company.
Absolutely.
Right? And the more I have this, like, organizations that have employees that have worked in diverse companies now are like, I don't want to work in a non-diverse. I want that. I'm seeking that. And they're finding they can't attract people. So you think about not being able to find talent because you haven't addressed this, right? They're starting to see that it's a poor part of their core business.
It has to be.
And it has to be.
Absolutely.
It has
Or
to
their
be.
competitors are going to be
Take over.
winning all the talent.
Yep.
And so people love these cultures. They want to be part of it. And how do we create them?
And it is changing. If you're not in there, then that company is going to fail. I mean, we talk about this all the time. If you're not open and understanding and being direct with your culture, you're not going to make it. Is that fair to say, or what do you guys? It's pretty bold. I'm saying they're going to go under. They're done. Toast.
And you're out. No,
We had this interesting conversation once with this group, and it's interesting, right? Because there's this thinking that if you don't diversify, you're going to fail. You're somehow underperforming or whatever. I don't think that's actually the case. I just think that if you are leading any organization that has any reach beyond your state globally, as a leader, it behooves you to be thinking bigger and broader, right? Because it actually does impact the bottom line in many, many, many ways. We're still not taking that out of the D&I equation. It's actually very much part of that. So it's really about expansion, growth, upping your talent, productivity, all those things. That doesn't mean that, look, there's lots of industries like finance, professional services that still are very largely dominated by white men, and they're still performing exceptionally well. So right, we're in this interesting conundrum of like, as the world gets more global, right, as the world starts getting smaller, will they be able to survive that? For how long?
And at least, or growth. Will they be able to keep growth? Probably not, I would think.
I wouldn't think so.
And there's lots of positive peer pressure. Goldman Sachs, NASDAQ, right? Applying lots of really great positive peer pressure in really good ways to really infuse that diversity of thought in upper level, right? But there's still a ways to go. Like there's only, I don't know if you looked at the data, but Fortune 500 corporate boards, if you look at the percentage of women, like Asian women and Latina women, they still only hold 1% of those seats.
1%.
1%.
Wow.
Right? And that is, I mean, if you think about, like, are we really infusing those upper levels with that?
We've got a ways to go.
We got a ways to go.
Yeah.
So I mean, don't get comfortable. Don't get
Well,
too
I think that's the
I think
best.
it's,
That's the best statement. Don't get comfortable.
Yeah, it's the missed opportunities.
Yeah.
It's not that they won't perform or they will fail. There's probably missed opportunities that you're going to have that you just aren't aware of, that you could have even more growth and profitability, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So with that said, Brad, I'm sorry, man. I've kind of
No,
hogging.
you're fine.
I'm having too much fun. I'm hogging the whole thing. I apologize.
No, you're fine. I love the intensity.
Well, this is cool. This is cool stuff. It needs to get out there. We need to talk more. We need to have more conversations like this.
Yeah.
So with that said, what do you think about technology? Is there a way that we can use technology to move that needle? How do you guys feel? Is there a space?
I mean, being a technologist for 25 years, this is where I have a lot of fun, right? So, when I was at eBay, I oversaw our technology operations and worked within that space, but I also was our global president of women in IT. And I oversaw our large organization. Sarah actually came in and helped me with some of my work there, which was really fun.
Awesome.
But we had 1,500 members in 17 countries. And
Wow.
and when I came into that role, we had no systems. I was just like like, how do we run an organization of this size and not have systems, tools, processes?
Yeah.
We aren't even tracking our budget. There was just the way we would never run a business the way we do DEI. Right, the rigor was missing, and so the first thing I did was put together my board, and I had a CFO and put people, processes, systems, just like we would do any other business, and that's what we're doing. And there's very key systems you need within this space to be able to be effective, whether it's communication systems, event planning systems, tracking systems, data and AI. We have partners like Canaries right now that does data and analytics for your HR systems to be able to track. That's incredible work. project management systems, so like your Monday.coms and your Saunas, be able to track your strategy and your execution and put metrics and goals around some of the work you're doing there. Community and hiring programs, like tracking your recruiting. And I know, Brad, the work that you're doing, you have technologies you're using there to be able to tie in and track your diversity hiring. And even companies like Diversed right now I'm working with, where they do employee resource group management. And they're able to actually track the impact of engagement impacts for their organization, seeing lift of employee engagement. And that drives growth and profitability, right? But before we just did stuff. And I think organizations are starting to go, let's not just do stuff. Let's treat it like a real business strategy and see what our outcomes are and track it and track towards our moonshot goals that we're putting in place. One of the coolest technologies that recently a startup here in Utah called Typhoon I've been working with, they have a mobile app for micro learning.
Oh, wow.
So, because one of the biggest challenges is learning, it's like sitting through a 3 to 4 hour trying to get off the floor to be able to go through a diversity training and some of these things. So how do we segment that down into gamification and rewards? And, there's a lot of exciting things happening in this space that it's building out as like its whole own industry, and we're building out this ecosystem of solutions to be able to support.
That's awesome. I mean, in that same vein, I think you're right. I mean, it is becoming more of that business strategy now because we are tracking metrics now, and it is more important to make sure that we do see that progress from the analytics side of things.
And do you think it's getting more where people are using those technologies and they're realizing the importance of using those technologies, or do you think we're still in a kind of an infancy of that?
I think we're in infancy. I think it's
There's
an
a
up and
lot
cut.
more.
There's a lot
Absolutely.
more to
I think
come.
so.
I think aggregating them, there's a lot of siloed work happening, and that's why we're trying to build out this ecosystem so that it's easier. A lot of the organizations I'm working with get very overwhelmed and just trying to navigate, right? Is this a trusted solution provider? Who do I go to? They're Googling all over the place. There's not like a one single source to go to find trusted advisement and solutions. And so that's what we're trying to build out, is kind of easing that burden of trying to figure this whole space out and being that one point of contact that, here's what we're trying to do. Here's our solution. Here's how it integrates to our strategy, our overall vision and mission for the company. Now, where do we go? Right.
Awesome.
Yeah,
You probably have a lot of experience in this, but I think, the testing software and things like that help equalize the playing field to be able to do blind testing and blind skills analysis as companies are looking to hire, because a lot of that used to get in the room and whiteboard code and kind of these more intimidating ways of kind of doing the hiring process. And so there's been, I think, just on the recruiting side, some good technology around the type of words, the language that we're using, how our job descriptions are being messaged. So those are all great. I think what I really like about the way Trina's describing this is I think leaders are really seeing diversity and inclusion as an actual business related strategy. So if you think about like the shift of it's the right thing to do, it's the nice thing to do, and in this very soft approach that might feel not connected to the actual business itself. So the way she described that was a more integrated way of seeing this as part of your business. And, eventually it is in its infancy, but imagine when I was just talking about those stats into leadership. Now imagine that connecting all the way into leadership succession planning, and not just having this random who you're going to pick to be your successor, but a more, I guess is meritocracy.
Yeah.
Meritocracy.
Yeah,
We had a
meritocracy.
What's the right word?
meritocracy.
Yeah.
We had a whole
Meritocratus.
conversation on that.
A more impact-driven way to actually decide who has the right skills to be your future leaders, right? Rather than some of the ways. But one of the things I struggle with a little bit is I still feel like there are many situations and roles that still depend on the human relationship component, right? And so I think technology is incredibly powerful.
But
Right? but for example, you're never going to fill executive roles yet using, right? You're never going to fill the board role using technology, right? There's still some key relationship pathing that I think we still have to be very aware of, that, I mean, frankly, are human to human and therefore going to be imperfect.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, I specialize in certain softwares that I recruit for, but I cannot stress that I personally think that you need the human element involved in that, because you never know. Somebody may look good and fantastic on paper, but until you actually interview them, until you actually speak with them, you don't really know. So
I want to add something to that, because I've seen this, especially in the work I do with tech moms and really working in the recruiting and retention. You can't just recruit diversity and exclude the inclusion part.
Absolutely.
You need to have the training and all of that. But some of the things that we see is the opt-out issue, and really shifting your recruiting to looking at being coaches and advisors, not just recruiters. And I think organizations shifting from talent acquisition to talent development, and upskilling programs as they have this diversity element to it, is really, really critical, so that you don't have a revolving door.
Absolutely.
And so one of the biggest things I've had to do, especially with the individuals I've been working with, is the job descriptions. A huge issue. You take a look at your job descriptions. It will exclude people. And if you need help, give Sarah or I a call. We'll help you.
I think it excludes pretty much the whole human race.
I know, right?
Usually.
It's like this.
Like, what is this
list
superhuman
of,
person that you want here?
It's crazy. Some of the job descriptions I see. There's so many things that we just don't. It's just the way we've always done it. So we keep doing it that way, and it does exclude people. And then getting them to opt in.
It's not good for the company.
No.
Try and find this magical weird thingy that they're trying to say they want.
What are the minimum requirements? can I coach to upskill, seeing people for their potential as well, not just what they've done.
So true.
Some of those things, just really having, sometimes when you just say that and then it's like, oh, and then it starts to become part of like your normal thinking. But until you have that awareness of like, oh yeah, that's what I've been doing and I got to shift, it doesn't take long, and it doesn't take a ton of extra work. It's just like, oh, I've been doing that, yeah.
And are you seeing that, you think, more? I mean, I know there's a long way to go, but do you we see that a little bit now?
I think there has to be that. I think that light bulb moment that Trina said is really, really powerful, and nobody can force someone to have that light bulb moment. And so I'll just give you an example on the job description, conversation, for example. I'll have people be like, well, I don't want to target women and people of color. I'm like, cool. I wasn't going to teach you to do that, but good. I'm glad. Right? Wow. Good. I'm glad I know where you are. Now, what's interesting, they'll say, but we just really can't hire any diversity. It's just white men. And I sit there and I say, so
you've had them say that to you.
The real truth is you've been targeting white men. Like, right? It's weird that nobody sits there and thinks about that and like, wow, my process of actually been targeting, and I've never thought of it that way. That's the hard truth moment. If you can face that truth, that's the aha moment. Now you're ready to expand, right? And I'm like, okay, great. Watch my hands. So you've been doing this with your hiring. You think I'm going to tell you to do this? Nope. We're going to do this, right? Exactly. And that's inclusion, right? Yeah. This is inclusion. And it's that, that light bulb moment. Yeah. But you got to face that hard truth and that admit that reality that's been embedded in your processes forever, right?
It's so simple. Why don't we?
It's so simple.
It's so simple, but I had to go through it myself, like recognizing my own white privilege and some of the things, a lot of people ask why I'm in the DEI space and I'm white, and there's a lot of forms of diversity and inclusion, but for me, I had to go through that, and I think that experience for me to go, wait, is my network diverse? Do I have people of color within my network? And I didn't. And this was probably 12 or 13 years ago, was very intentional in broadening my network so that when I get those positions that come up or when the opportunities come up, my network is involved. And you have to start the work now. It's not when the job opens and then I start looking for diversity. It's our networks are what build most of our hiring practices, and so it's that intentionality. And I had to go through that myself and go, oh wait, I'm doing this, and so I understand, and can relate to that same aha light bulb moment that a lot of people are probably going through. And I'm still learning. We're all
all
on a
learning.
journey here.
Yeah.
We're all learning.
Trina's also going to show up to the MLK walk as well, right?
Yes, I did with my
she's-
son.
Yes, I
With-
mean,
it was an
Yes.
incredible experience, and so just getting more
Yeah.
involved in, all of our communities. It's really a wonderful thing to experience and to be part of, and to have your awareness open that way. And once you start doing that, you want more of it.
I love the positiveness of it too. This is
Yeah.
a positive thing, a very powerful positive thing. I want to ask, just going to throw this out there because I'm curious what you guys think. How many companies? I mean, there's so many companies that kind of know, oh, we have to follow a thingy, and they don't really have that as their culture, but they know, oh, we have to put a check box
mark.
in that. Bigger companies that say, okay, we're going to pretend that we give a crap. Is that? Do you see that a lot? Is that? I mean, to me, it feels like it's probably a lot.
I don't work with any clients like that.
Well,
can
because
kinda tell
here's
in
the thing: you see right through them almost immediately, right?
I've been out this for a little while, but happily, right, to the positive energy part is I don't have to work with clients like that. Like, and I'm
get to
going to
choose.
tell in their approach. I'm going to tell in the way they treat me as a leader. And so there's all these indicators, right, that I can just say, we're actually not a great fit, or they'll just never respond to me. So either way, it works
itself
fine.
out.
But here's
so they don't even try, even really.
no, they try.
Oh, they
just
okay.
they don't.
But it's
they
not
haven't really
real. You can
faced-
tell it's not
it's-
real.
I
Disingenuous.
think it's positive. I think they have good intentions. But
Yeah.
I think, but I don't think, right? If you say on the spectrum of, I would call it a readiness level. Okay, so how
Okay.
ready are they to really take what I would call an authentic journey? Now, when they're ready, the good news is that frankly, I say, look, I don't expect you to copy anything anyone else is doing. You got to build something that's authentic to you and your culture, and I'm going to help you do that. But what a great relief that I don't have to be Adobe. I don't have to be eBay. I don't have to be. I can be
you.
myself.
Yeah.
I can be this company that I built, and we can build something that feels unique and authentic to us. And that's the process that I think is empowering, right? And it can engage everyone in that exercise, but you have to have a readiness level to get there, right? And so the ones that are, can you come talk for an hour for free to my whole company, are not quite there yet, right? And so
I love it. I put a little bit of a negative spin on it, and you still brought it back positive. I love it. I love it. They're just not ready. They're just not ready. They're not jerks. They're just not ready.
Right, and the more organizations that become ready and their examples and vocal examples, it's helping other organizations get there, because they're saying, oh, look what they're doing, I can do that too. And I think that really critical part when we're working on DEI strategies is you start with that company's vision, mission, and values. A lot of companies look at them and say, all right, what's everybody else doing? And
that's
it's
not-
like it doesn't.
that's not
let's
authentic.
not
Doesn't
start
matter.
there. It's not authentic. Who are you? Who do you want to become? Working with banking organizations that look at their community and providing opportunity from financial services to underserved communities. That's not going to be at an eBay. That's not going to be at a Oracle or it's going to be unique to the organization and what their goals are. And every strategy is going to be different. There is no set standard. Here's a strategy. Go do it. Yours is going to be unique to you, just like every business has a different business approach, right?
Yeah. Wow, that's great.
That's interesting.
This is cool stuff, guys. This is
We
exciting.
think so.
It's
I love
fun.
it.
I love it as well. So can we talk a little bit more about the conference and kind of learn a little? I know you touched on it a little bit. Could you guys maybe all give your little insight into the
Well,
conference?
Ginger
maybe.
deserves all the credit. She
Yeah,
put
hardly.
together an
Absolutely.
amazing lineup. And I just think it's really great to have the caliber of speakers and to be able to remind people that I think everybody who will be there still really understands how relevant this is, but to have such a strong business focus, because I think sometimes it gets very sort of more in the social space, which is important. And what we're finding as companies is we can't really carve out this this company wall and be like, no social conversations of what's going on the outside world can come into our workplace. That's not realistic anymore. But what I do appreciate is when it's a very business driven conversation, it really empowers leaders to really think about their own business, how they're going to lead, right? What they're going to do differently as business leaders. Because a lot of times, I'll say it's really great to care about social justice and absolutely please do. But the most power you can have right now in this moment is the way you lead your company, right? And that, if every leader were to do that, we'd start to see massive shifts in across industries, right? We should absolutely care about social justice, but also understand where our sphere of influence can be best leveraged as leaders.
Yeah. I think leaders, oh, sorry, Ginger.
No, go ahead.
I think leaders, but then getting your organization to all see themselves as leaders in this space. Like every single one of your employees, the executive team should lead out on this, and they should be setting the example and saying, we want every single one of you to own and be able to be creators of change, and how do we enable that?
And
whether it's just volunteer or social, like there are so many ways to get involved. We want everybody to feel like they have a place. And that middle management layer, I call it the frozen middle, right? Where decisions on hiring and promotion and all of these issues really can stem from. That is such a critical part of them recognizing their role in this space as well.
So who would you guys, did you have something to add?
No, I was just going to say that we had one of the best problems you could ever have when putting a summit on. We put out an RFP and said, who in Utah is in this space or beyond, and we have companies flying in from all over. We received so many proposals, and Sarah and I sat down and read through them all, and to weed it down from 50 proposals to 16 sessions is just a gift. I mean, we have so much talent and people that have interest in leading out in this space. It's pretty inspiring.
Yeah.
So who would you say should be at the conference? Who should be there? Who should go see? Who should be there to learn?
Yeah, I just answered this question the other day at our board meeting. Anybody who's interested in intentional leadership in this space should be there, and their employees should be there as well.
I love that you guys talk about employees. I think that the key is that if you set a culture of not number employees, but people employees. You know what I mean? I think, is that not the key to look at your employees as people, and that they're a part of what makes you successful, not another number to get something done?
Yeah, I like how Ginger described that, because a lot of times in the past it'd be like, oh, I'm going to send the woman HR manager, or I'm going to send this person. That's your space that you belong in. Right, and think about
which is the wrong mindset.
Think about what that reinforces,
everybody.
right? Yeah,
Everybody has a role.
And so the shift of any leader who wants to be intentional, because we can all lead. Just because I happen to be a woman of color. By the way, I was raised by a white family. I'm adopted, so I don't have the experiences of being raised by Asian parents, but. Anyone can lead in this space. It's just a matter of building that competency. We do what we do because we're strategists. We don't do it because we're women. Does that make sense? And I think that's a very clear misconception of the old way of doing diversity and inclusion. You belong in this space because you have this optical identity factor about you. And now,
I shouldn't go because I'm a white man.
Yes.
I will be stepping on toes or something, and that's the old mindset. That's the old mindset.
Or my job is to sit in that room and not say anything, right? And that's hard. I think that's a hard position for.
It's hard for me to sit in a room and not say anything.
I can imagine. We would want your energy. We want the mix. And I think that's really what the chamber has been able to build, is this wonderful mix. If you look at all the panels, I mean, it's not just race, it's not just gender, right? There's so many topics that are covered, and also community topics as well, which is really great too. But and also age. So we went through a list of identity characters. So we're like, okay, so who's going to drive? Like age, right?
Yeah.
Think about how often we don't talk about generations
And
and
Ageism.
There's
important.
a discrimination. There's a huge discrimination.
Yeah.
Well,
and-
even knowing how to lead different generations. There's a whole leadership, understanding.
And the
That's
pronoun
definitely-
conversation.
Yes.
It terrifies people.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems right now the state's facing and the nation is this workforce issue. And I think this is a way inclusive, making and belonging, and creating a culture where people don't want to leave out the back door. Trina talks about retention. So important right now.
Yeah. And
Wow.
mental health is also included in, so think about like how really, and these are all the things that companies care about right now, right? And very relevant topics.
Yeah.
So how do people? How do we sign up for it? How do you get there? How do you?
Yeah,
how much is it? All that stuff.
Salt Lake Chamber website. You can register now all the way up until noon of November 1st. And tickets are $120, and we have tables, and we also have some scholarship tickets as well that we've been administering.
Is there some way they can get a hold of you, or
Yep, my information's on the Salt Lake Chamber website, and
Awesome.
again, Ginger Chin. So
awesome? Oh,
Two
it's good.
ends.
two ends.
Two ends.
Good to know.
Is there a virtual aspect at all, or is it completely
No, we're doing strictly in person this time.
interesting? Yeah, well,
I like
ready to get back to that.
Yeah.
Virtual's cool, and we probably are not going to ever get away with it, but gosh, it's not as fun as having folks here and
Absolutely.
talking.
And the chamber always top-notch events, so I'm always excited to partner with them and just appreciate their leadership in this space, and because they represent so many of the large organizations that really make our economy run, and it's so significant to have that type of leadership in the state.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been great,
Yeah.
Brad. I've hogged the whole thing. I apologize, man. This has just been so enlightening, and thank you for coming and being on the show. This has just been so good. I just can't say enough of this was just an awesome interview.
It's very rare, but you left me speechless.
Well, thank you
Thank
you
you.
for being here, and thank you for being on the new not you guys being on the new IT. Thank you for listening to the new IT, and we will see you next time.